Jamie Trenner clutched the datapad in trembling hands, scrolling through the diplomatic protocol briefing for the 14th time since breakfast. The display flickered slightly under his nervous grip, as if the device itself was sharing his anxiety. Delilah, run through the Herzari cultural taboos again, Jamie said, his voice cracking slightly. The small earpiece he wore gave a gentle chime of acknowledgement. Of course, Jamie, responded the AI assistant in a tone that managed to be both soothing and slightly condescending. Herzari cultural taboos include touching a warrior's weapon without permission, showing the palms of your hands without prior introduction, questioning a superior's battle strategy, consuming food before the highest-ranking person present, displaying any sign of physical weakness, and— I know, Jamie interrupted, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. Just making sure I've got all straight. Any mistakes, and I could trigger an interstellar incident. No pressure, Delilah replied dryly. Jamie sighed and stood up from his small desk, straightening his diplomat's uniform. As the most junior member of the Earth Diplomatic Corps, he still couldn't understand why he'd been selected for this assignment. First contact with the Herzari had occurred just 8 months ago, and negotiations had been tense at best. The warrior race was known for their strict hierarchy, martial prowess, and uncompromising sense of honor. They were also physically intimidating, standing nearly 7 feet tall on average, with dense musculature and skin that varied in shades of blue and purple. The SS Dauntless hummed around him, the massive diplomatic vessel serving as neutral ground for these preliminary negotiations. Jamie had been briefed that this meeting was relatively low stakes, simply establishing protocols for future cultural exchanges, but that did little to calm his nerves. The Herzari delegation is approaching Docking Bay 3, announced the ship's computer. All diplomatic personnel, please report to the Grand Hall for the reception. Jamie's stomach lurched. They're early, by approximately 17 minutes, Delilah confirmed. Punctuality is considered a sign of eagerness in Herzari culture. Perhaps they're actually looking forward to this meeting. Or they're eager to get it over with, Jamie muttered, checking his appearance one last time in the small mirror on his wall. His reflection showed a man in his late 20s with an ordinary face that, at the moment, was pale with anxiety. Nothing about his appearance suggested he should be handling interstellar diplomacy. The Grand Hall of the Dauntless was designed to impress, with soaring ceilings, elegant furnishings, and massive viewports offering a breathtaking panorama of space. By the time Jamie arrived, slightly out of breath from his hurried walk, most of the human delegation was already assembled. Ambassador Chun gave him a sharp look that clearly communicated his displeasure at Jamie's timing. "Sorry, sir," Jamie whispered, taking his position near the back of the reception line. As the most junior diplomat, he would be introduced last, a small mercy that gave him a few more precious minutes to compose himself. The massive doors at the far end of the hall slid open with a dramatic hiss, and the Herzari delegation strode in. Jamie forgot to breathe for a moment. The aliens were even more imposing in person than in the briefing videos, tall, powerfully built, and moving with fluid grace that belied their size. Their ceremonial armor gleamed under the hall's lights, adorned with symbols that Jamie recognized as denoting various battle honors. Leading the procession was a figure that immediately captured everyone's attention. Unlike her comrades, whose skin ranged from deep blue to indigo, hers was a striking violet hue that seemed to shimmer slightly with each movement. Her armor, while clearly functional, was more elaborately decorated than the others, with intricate etchings that caught the light. Most startling were her eyes, large, intense, and a brilliant amber that provided a shocking contrast to her skin. Commander Lyra Vi, Ambassador Chun announced formally, stepping forward to greet the Herzari leader. On behalf of Earth and its colonies, we welcome you aboard the Dauntless. Lyra Vi inclined her head slightly, the precise degree of bow that indicated respect without submission. Ambassador, she replied, her voice surprisingly melodious despite its low register. The Herzari Dominion acknowledges your welcome. The formal introductions proceeded down the line, each human diplomat stepping forward to be acknowledged by the commander and her entourage. Jamie's heart pounded harder with each passing introduction. Finally, it was his turn. Junior Diplomatic Envoy Jamie Trenner, Ambassador Chin said, with noticeably less enthusiasm than he'd shown for the senior staff. Jamie stepped forward, trying desperately to remember every protocol he'd studied. Bow to exactly 15 degrees. Keep palms facing downward. Maintain eye contact, but don't stare. Don't smile too broadly. Herzari considered showing teeth to be either a challenge or a sign of nervousness. As he straightened from his bow, he found himself directly meeting Lyra Vai's intense amber gaze. She was even more impressive up close, towering over him by at least a foot, her presence commanding and regal. Something about her expression, a slight tilt of her head as she regarded him, triggered a cascade of panic in Jamie's mind. And then it happened. His brain short-circuited completely. "It's an honor to meet you, Commander," he managed, and then added in what his terrified mind somehow thought was a casual, friendly afterthought. "You're really cute." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. The entire hall went silent. Jamie could practically feel the collective intake of breath from the human delegation. One of the Herzari warriors made a choking sound, but it was Lyra Vai's reaction that was truly shocking. The commander's eyes widened, her poised demeanor cracking for the first time. And then, impossibly, inexplicably, her violet cheeks began to darken, flushing to a vivid crimson that spread across her face. For several excruciating seconds, no one moved or spoke. Then Lyra Vai made a sharp gesture to her delegation, turned abruptly, and strode from the hall, her warriors falling into formation behind her without question. As the doors closed behind the Herzari, Ambassador Chin turned to Jamie with an expression of pure horror. "Trenner, what have you done?" Before Jamie could stammer out a response, Delilah's voice came urgently in his ear. "Jamie, you've just triggered Diplomatic Protocol Override Alpha. Report to Briefing Room 3 immediately. This is very, very bad." "What did I say?" Jamie whispered, his voice barely audible. "What does cute mean to them?" "That's what we need to figure out," Delilah replied grimly. "Because whatever it means, you just made the most feared warrior commander in the quadrant blush like a schoolgirl." The next hour was the most excruciating of Jamie's life. Confined to Briefing Room 3, he sat across from not only Ambassador Chun, but also Dr. Helena Frost, the expedition's leading xenoanthropologist, and Captain Eliza Martinez, the ship's commanding officer. Their expressions ranged from bewilderment to barely contained fury. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Dr. Frost said, pinching the bridge of her nose. "You called Commander Lyra Vai, leader of the Herzari Battle Fleet, decorated war hero, and our primary diplomatic contact. Cute." Jamie stared at the table. "It just slipped out." "Things don't just slip out in diplomatic negotiations, Trenner," Ambassador Chin snapped. Delilah's voice emanated from the room's speakers. "I believe I've identified the problem based on our linguistic database and cultural notes. In Herzari language, the closest translation to cute is jarek, which is problematic." "Define problematic," Captain Martinez demanded. "In Herzari culture, jarek is a term of deep personal admiration reserved exclusively for potential life mates," Delilah explained. "It acknowledges not just physical attraction, but a recognition of equal spiritual and martial worthiness. It's essentially a declaration of intent to court." A stunned silence fell over the room. "Oh God," Jamie finally whispered. "I accidentally proposed to her." "Worse than that," Dr. Frost said, her expression shifting from annoyance to fascination. "You essentially declared her to be your equal in all ways that matter to Herzari culture: strength, honor, spirit. Coming from a human, a species they consider physically inferior, well, it's either a grave insult or a profound compliment, depending on how she took it." "And how did she take it?" Captain Martinez asked. "She blushed," Jamie said weakly. "Do Herzari normally blush?" Dr. Frost leaned forward, suddenly intensely interested. "No, they don't, at least not in any context we've observed. Their physiological responses are typically much more controlled. The fact that she had such a visible reaction is unprecedented." Before anyone could respond further, The room's communication panel chimed. "Ambassador," said the ship's communication officer, "we're receiving a request from Vactor, Commander Vi's second-in-command. He's requesting a private meeting with Junior Envoy Trenner." All eyes turned to Jamie, who felt his stomach drop through the floor. "They're going to challenge me to ritual combat or something, aren't they?" he asked miserably. "Possibly," Dr. Frost said, not very reassuringly. "But refusing would be a greater insult at this point. You've initiated something, even if accidentally, and now you must see it through." "Wonderful," Jamie muttered. "Ambassador," Chen glared at him. "You'll meet with Vactor and try to undo whatever damage you've caused. Be humble, be apologetic, but don't grovel. They despise weakness. Explain it was a cultural misunderstanding." "And if that doesn't work?" Jamie asked. "Then Earth will be looking for a new junior diplomat," Chen replied grimly. The meeting with Vactor was set for 30 minutes later in one of the ship's smaller conference rooms. Jamie arrived early, despite Delilah's advice that punctuality might be misinterpreted as eagerness in this context. He couldn't help it. His anxiety wouldn't let him sit still any longer. Vactor arrived precisely on time. The Herzari warrior was nearly as impressive as Lyra Vi herself, broad-shouldered, with deep blue skin and silver-gray eyes that seemed to evaluate and dismiss Jamie in a single glance. "Junior Envoy Trenner," Vactor said, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Subcommander Vactor," Jamie replied, attempting a respectful nod. "Thank you for—" "I will speak," Vactor interrupted. "You will listen." He began pacing the small room, his movements controlled and predatory. "You have placed Commander Vi in an unprecedented position. For 3 cycles, she has led our forces with distinction. Never has she shown hesitation or uncertainty. Until today." Jamie swallowed hard, but remained silent as instructed. "Your declaration was either profound ignorance or remarkable courage," Vactor continued. "Commander Vi believes it may be both." He stopped pacing and fixed Jamie with an intense stare. "She wishes to speak with you herself, to determine your true intention." "I meant no disrespect," Jamie finally ventured. "In human culture, the word I used has a different meaning. Much more casual." Vactor made a dismissive gesture. "Words have power beyond intention. You have invoked the sacred right of Jarek. Whether you understood, its meaning is irrelevant to the ritual now set in motion." "Ritual," Jamie echoed weakly. "Commander Vi awaits you in the ship's arboretum at the next cycle change," Vactor said, already moving toward the door. "Come alone. Dress in your formal attire." He paused, looking back at Jamie with what might have been a trace of amusement. "And prepare yourself for the first challenge." "First challenge," Jamie called after him, but Vactor had already departed, leaving Jamie alone with his mounting dread. "Delilah," he whispered, "what's the first challenge?" "Working on it," the AI replied, sounding unusually troubled. "But preliminary research suggests it may involve some form of gift exchange or personal revelation. Nothing lethal." "Probably. That's not reassuring. Would you prefer I lie to you?" Jamie sighed and slumped into a chair. "How did this happen? I'm the most junior diplomat on this mission. I'm not supposed to be involved in anything important." "Perhaps that's exactly why this happened," Delilah suggested. "You weren't calculating or political. You were genuine, even if accidentally so. That might be refreshing to someone who deals with carefully crafted diplomatic facades all day." "Are you saying she might actually be interested in me?" Jamie asked incredulously. "I'm saying the situation is more complex than you realize," Delilah replied. "And you better start preparing for that meeting." The ship's arboretum was one of its most beautiful features, a vast chamber filled with plant specimens from dozens of worlds, creating a lush, peaceful environment that served as both recreation area and scientific resource. When Jamie arrived, dressed in his formal diplomatic uniform as instructed, he found it completely empty except for Commander Lyra Vi. She stood near a small pond, her back to him, apparently studying a floating bloom of iridescent water lilies from Europa. She had exchanged her ceremonial armor for what appeared to be more casual attire by Herzari standards, though it still incorporated elements that could probably double as light armor in an emergency. In the softer lighting of the arboretum, Her violet skin seemed to glow subtly. "Junior Envoy Trenner," she said without turning, clearly having sensed his arrival somehow. "Approach." Jamie moved forward on legs that felt suddenly unsteady. When he reached a point about 5 feet away from her, she finally turned to face him. Her amber eyes studied him with an intensity that made him want to flee. "You call me cute," she said abruptly. Jamie took a deep breath. "Yes, Commander. In human culture, it's a casual compliment. I didn't realize its significance in your culture. I apologize for any offense." "I was not offended," she interrupted, her expression unreadable. "I was surprised. No one has ever addressed me with that term before." "Oh," Jamie said, momentarily at a loss for words. "That's good." A faint smile flickered across her face, so briefly he almost thought he'd imagined it. "Perhaps. It remains to be seen." She gestured toward a small bench near the pond. "Sit. We will talk." Jamie sat, trying not to show his nervousness. Lyra remained standing, towering over him. "In Herzari culture," she began, "to call someone Jarek is to recognize them as your equal in all ways that matter: strength, honor, spirit. It is reserved for those one would consider as a potential life mate." "So I've been told," Jamie said miserably. "I truly didn't know." "But you said it," she pressed. "Whether you knew its meaning or not, the words came from you. I want to understand why." Jamie considered his response carefully. He could feel the weight of interstellar diplomacy on his shoulders, but something told him that Lyra would detect any political calculation or dishonesty. "You're intimidating," he admitted finally. "Powerful. Commanding. When I saw you up close, my mind just short-circuited." In human culture, calling someone cute can be a way of making something impressive seem more approachable, like we do with dangerous predators that also happen to be aesthetically pleasing. Lyra's head tilted slightly, reminding Jamie of a predator considering unfamiliar prey. "You find me dangerous yet aesthetically pleasing?" Jamie felt heat rise to his face. That's not exactly. Yes, I suppose I do." To his astonishment, the faintest trace of crimson appeared on her cheeks again. She turned away quickly, ostensibly to examine a nearby plant. "Interesting," she said after a moment. "You are very different from the other diplomats I have encountered. They measure every word, calculate every gesture. You do not." "That's one way of putting it," Jamie muttered. "I have brought something for you," Lyra said suddenly, reaching into a pouch at her belt. The first challenge of Jarek requires an exchange of personal significance. She extended her hand, revealing what appeared to be a small, crystalline object. As Jamie carefully took it from her palm, it unfurled, revealing itself to be a tiny creature, somewhat like a cross between a butterfly and a jellyfish. Its translucent body pulsed with soft bioluminescence. "This is a bond fluff," Lyra explained. "They are rare creatures from my homeworld. They bond with a single caretaker for life and respond to emotional states. This one is newly hatched and has not yet formed a bond." Jamie stared in wonder as the delicate creature floated above his palm, its lights shifting through patterns of blue and green. "It's beautiful," he said sincerely, "but I don't understand. Why give me something so valuable?" "The gift represents the giver," Lyra said, watching the bond fluff with an uncharacteristically soft expression. "Delicate yet resilient, capable of beauty and wonder, but easily destroyed by carelessness." Her eyes shifted to meet Jamie's. "How you care for it reflects how you would care for the bond between us." "Oh," Jamie said, suddenly understanding the gravity of the gift. I don't have anything nearly as meaningful to give you in return." "The first challenge does not require equal exchange, only sincere offering," Lyra replied. "What would you give if you could give anything?" Jamie thought for a moment, then carefully transferred the bond fluff to his shoulder, where it seemed content to perch. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a worn pocket compass, its brass case scratched and dulled with age. "This belonged to my grandfather," he explained, holding it out to her. "He was an explorer on Earth before we achieved spaceflight. He taught me that the unknown shouldn't be feared, just respected and approached with an open mind." When I joined the diplomatic corps, he gave me this to remind me that even in space, we all need something to help us find our way. Lyra took the compass with surprising gentleness, examining it with curious eyes. It indicates direction. It points to magnetic north on Earth, Jamie explained. It doesn't work in space, of course. It's more symbolic now. Lyra nodded slowly. A worthy offering. You honor your ancestor by carrying his wisdom. She carefully tucked the compass into a small compartment in her attire. The first challenge is complete. Jamie felt a wave of relief wash over him. So, what happens now? Now we proceed to the second challenge. Lyra stated matter-of-factly. Tomorrow, you will accompany me to observe our combat training. You will learn of the Herzari way of warfare. Jamie's relief evaporated instantly. Combat training? I'm not sure that's a good idea. I'm not exactly a warrior. The purpose is not for you to participate, Lyra clarified, something like amusement flickering in her eyes. Merely to observe and understand. Unless, of course, you wish to withdraw from the Jurek. The way she said it made it clear that withdrawal would have significant diplomatic consequences. Jamie swallowed hard. No, I'll be there, he assured her. Looking forward to it. The faint smile appeared on Lyra's face again, lasting just a fraction longer. This time, until tomorrow, then Jamie Trenner. She turned to leave, then paused. The bond fluff requires only light and occasional moisture. It will alert you if its needs are not met. As she strode away, the bond fluff on Jamie's shoulder pulsed with a soft pink light. He wondered what emotion that color represented. Well, he murmured to himself, at least she didn't kill me. Congratulations on surviving the first challenge, Delilah's voice commented dryly in his ear. Though I feel compelled to point out that you've now exchanged personal tokens with the commander of the Herzari fleet. Ambassador Chun is going to have an aneurysm. One problem at a time, Jamie sighed, gently stroking the bond fluff with one finger. It responded with a brighter pulse of pink light. At least someone seems to like me. The next morning, Jamie found himself in the Dauntless' largest training facility, which had been temporarily allocated to the Herzari delegation. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the room, trying to make himself as inconspicuous as possible as he watched the alien warriors engage in what could only be described as controlled violence. Their training exercises were like nothing Jamie had ever seen, part martial art, part ritual dance, and part actual combat. Warriors paired off in duels that seemed to follow complex rules he couldn't begin to comprehend, using weapons that ranged from staffs and blades to energy devices that crackled ominously. Lyra Vi stood apart, observing her warriors with a critical eye. Occasionally, she would call out a correction or demonstration, moving with such fluid grace that it momentarily took Jamie's breath away. On his shoulder, the bond fluff pulsed with a deep blue light. After what seemed like hours, but was probably only 45 minutes, Lyra approached him. Unlike the other warriors, she showed no signs of exertion from the brief demonstrations she had performed. Your thoughts, Jamie Trenner? She asked, those amber eyes studying him closely. Jamie considered his words carefully. It's impressive, beautiful, in a terrifying sort of way. You find beauty in combat? She asked, seeming genuinely curious. Not in the violence itself, Jamie clarified. In the discipline, the control, the purpose behind each movement. He gestured toward a pair of warriors engaged in a particularly complex sequence of maneuvers. They're not just fighting, they're communicating through movement. Something shifted in Lyra's expression, a subtle softening that most would miss entirely. You perceive more than I expected. Most outsiders see only brutality in our ways. Don't get me wrong, Jamie said with a nervous laugh. It's still terrifying. I wouldn't last 5 seconds against even your most junior warrior. 3 seconds, Lyra corrected, but there was definitely amusement in her voice now. Perhaps 2 if you ran. The bond fluff on Jamie's shoulder pulsed with a golden yellow light, and Lyra's gaze shifted to it, her expression becoming thoughtful. It responds well to you, she observed. That is unusual for a newly hatched bond fluff. Maybe it senses my absolute terror and feels sorry for me, Jamie suggested. To his shock, Lyra actually laughed. a brief, melodic sound that she quickly contained, glancing around as if to ensure none of her warriors had noticed. "You are strange, Jamie Trenner. You acknowledge your fear instead of hiding it, yet you do not let it control you. That is not weakness, as I once would have thought." Before Jamie could respond to this unexpected compliment, a commotion at the training room entrance caught their attention. Ambassador Chen stood in the doorway, his face a mask of barely contained diplomatic outrage. "Junior Envoy Trenner," he called, his voice clipped and formal. "Your presence is required for an urgent briefing." Jamie glanced at Lyra. "I should probably go," she said, her commander's mask slipping back into place. "The second challenge is complete. You have observed with respect and insight. Thank you for allowing me to watch," Jamie said, meaning it despite his discomfort. As he turned to leave, he added impulsively, "You're magnificent when you demonstrate the combat forms, by the way." He was rewarded with another flash of crimson across her cheeks before he hurried away to face Ambassador Chen's wrath. The urgent briefing turned out to be exactly what Jamie had feared, a diplomatic intervention. "This has gone far enough," Ambassador Chen declared once they were sealed in a secure conference room. "You've somehow initiated a Herzari courtship ritual with their military commander, and it's threatening to overshadow the entire negotiation process." "I didn't exactly plan this," Jamie protested. "Intentional or not, it needs to end," Chen insisted. "Earth Central is concerned that the Herzari might be using this situation to distract us from the actual negotiations, or worse, to secure some kind of advantage through you." Jamie frowned, thinking of Lyra's brief, genuine laugh. "I don't think that's what's happening." "You're not qualified to make that assessment, Trenner," Chun snapped. "You're to inform Commander Vi that you withdraw from this, whatever it is, and that's an order." The bond fluff on Jamie's shoulder pulsed with an angry red, drawing Chen's attention for the first time. "And what is that?" he demanded. "A gift," Jamie said defensively. "Part of the first challenge." Chun pinched the bridge of his nose. "You're already exchanging tokens? This is worse than I thought." He straightened, his expression hardening. "End it, Trenner. That's a direct order. The stability of Earth-Herzari relations depends on it." As Jamie left the conference room, Delilah spoke up for the first time since the meeting began. "You know, there's a problem with the ambassador's order." "Just one?" Jamie asked bitterly. "According to Dr. Frost's research, withdrawing from Jarek once it's begun is considered a grave insult in Herzari culture, essentially declaring that you found the other person unworthy after initial acceptance." Jamie stopped walking. "So, if I follow orders, I could trigger the diplomatic incident we're trying to avoid." "Precisely," Delilah confirmed. "And there's something else you should know. I've been monitoring ship communications. The Herzari High Command has learned of the situation and has sent a representative to observe the proceedings." "That doesn't sound good." "It gets worse. Apparently, there are factions within Herzari leadership pushing for Lyra Vi to formalize the connection for political reasons, regardless of her personal feelings on the matter." Jamie leaned against the corridor wall, suddenly overwhelmed. "So she's being pressured too." He thought of the brief moments when Lyra's carefully maintained facade had slipped, revealing something more vulnerable beneath. "What am I supposed to do, Delilah?" "I'm an AI assistant, not a relationship counselor," Delilah replied, though her tone was gentler than usual. "But it seems to me that you and Commander Vi might benefit from an honest conversation away from all these political pressures." Jamie nodded slowly, an idea forming. "Delilah, I need you to find me something specific in the ship's database." The third meeting with Lyra Vi took place in the Dauntless Stellar Observation Deck, a circular room with a transparent ceiling that offered an unobstructed view of the surrounding space. Jamie had arranged for the area to be temporarily closed to other personnel, citing ongoing diplomatic discussions. When Lyra arrived, she found Jamie standing beneath the spectacular view of a nearby nebula, its swirling colors casting ethereal light across the deck. The bond fluff floated nearby, pulsing with a calm blue glow. "You requested this meeting outside the formal challenges," Lyra noted, coming to stand beside him. This is irregular. Everything about our situation is irregular, Jamie replied with a nervous smile. I thought we might benefit from talking somewhere without so many eyes watching our every move. Lyra studied him, then nodded once. A tactically sound assessment. Both our people are placing expectations upon this interaction. That's actually what I wanted to discuss, Jamie said. I've learned that your high command is pressuring you to formalize this connection for political reasons, and my superiors are ordering me to withdraw from it, also for political reasons. And yet we are here, defying both. Lyra observed, a hint of that rare smile touching her lips. I thought we deserved the chance to decide for ourselves, Jamie said. After all, we're the ones caught in the middle of this. A bold stance for one who claims not to be a warrior, Lyra commented, but her tone held approval rather than criticism. I may not be a warrior, but I've learned a few things from watching yours, Jamie replied, including the value of facing challenges directly. For a moment, they stood in companionable silence, watching the nebula's slow dance across the stars. Then Lyra spoke, her voice softer than Jamie had ever heard it. On my world, I am Varshilin, battle leader, commander, strategist. My life has been dedicated to the protection and advancement of my people. There has been no room for personal considerations. That sounds lonely, Jamie said quietly. It is the path of honor, Lyra replied, but something in her tone suggested she had indeed felt that loneliness. Until you spoke that word, cute, no one had ever seen me as anything but Commander Vi in many cycles. Jamie turned to look at her directly. And how did it feel when I said it? The crimson flush returned to her cheeks, but this time she didn't turn away. Disturbing, confusing, and not entirely unpleasant. She met his gaze steadily. You see me differently than others do, without fear or calculation. It is refreshing. For what it's worth, Jamie said, feeling his own cheeks warm. I've enjoyed getting to know you these past few days, even under these bizarre circumstances. You're not at all what I expected, nor you, Lyra admitted. I had dismissed humans as physically weak and overly emotional. But you have shown courage, honor, and insight. These are worthy traits, regardless of physical form. The bond fluff drifted between them, its glow shifting to a vibrant purple that both had yet to see. It hovered there, pulsing rhythmically. What happens now? Jamie asked softly. We've completed 2 challenges, according to your customs. Does that mean anything? The traditional Jurek involves 7 challenges, Lyra explained. But each is traditionally more complex and demanding than what we have observed. This situation is unprecedented. A cross-species Jarek has never been recorded in our history. So we're making this up as we go along? In essence, yes. For the first time, Lyra looked uncertain. My duty to my people demands that I consider the political implications of any decision. And yet, whatever she might have said next was interrupted by the ship's alert system blaring to life. Red emergency lights began flashing throughout the observation deck. Attention, all personnel, came Captain Martinez's voice over the ship-wide communication system. We have detected multiple unidentified vessels approaching at high velocity. All diplomatic staff report to secure areas immediately. This is not a drill. Lyra's entire demeanor transformed instantly, the commander replacing the woman Jamie had glimpsed beneath. My warriors, she said sharply, already moving toward the exit. Jamie hurried after her, the bond fluff zipping back to his shoulder. Who could it be, he asked. Pirates? Raiders? Unlikely in this sector, Lyra replied grimly. But there are those among the outer planets who oppose our diplomatic efforts. Extremists who believe interaction with other species weakens the Herzari. They reached the corridor intersection where they would need to separate. Lyra to the Herzari quarters, Jamie to the human diplomatic section. Be cautious, Jamie Trenner, Lyra said, pausing briefly. If these are indeed Herzari separatists, your connection to me may make you a target. You too, Jamie replied, suddenly afraid for her rather than himself. I mean, be safe, Commander. Something unspoken passed between them in that moment. A recognition of the bond that had begun to form, politics and culture aside. Then Lyra was gone, striding purposefully toward her warriors, while Jamie reluctantly headed in the opposite direction. He had barely made it halfway to the diplomatic quarters when the ship shuddered violently, nearly throwing him off his feet. The lighting flickered, then stabilized at emergency levels. "Delilah," Jamie called, steadying himself against a wall. "What's happening?" "Three vessels of unknown configuration have engaged the Dauntless," the AI reported. "They're employing some form of energy weapon that's disrupting our defensive shields. Captain Martinez has ordered all non-essential personnel to emergency shelters." Another impact rocked the ship, this one stronger than the first. "That doesn't feel like energy weapons," Jamie muttered. "That feels like boarding parties detected in sectors 7, 12, and 15, Delilah interrupted urgently. Security teams responding. Sector 15. That was where the Herzari delegation was quartered. Jamie's heart raced. Without fully thinking through his actions, he changed direction, heading toward the conflict rather than away from it. "Jamie, this is inadvisable," Delilah warned. "Your diplomatic status doesn't prepare you for combat situations." "I'm not planning to fight," Jamie replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "But I need to know what's happening." He slowed as he approached Sector 15, the sounds of conflict growing louder. The distinctive hum of energy weapons mixed with shouts in both human and Herzari languages. Moving cautiously, Jamie peered around a corner and immediately wished he hadn't. The corridor ahead was a battlefield. 3 Herzari warriors, including Vactor, stood in defensive formation, engaged in combat with a larger group of attackers. The attackers wore armor similar to the Herzari delegations, but with distinctive red markings that Jamie didn't recognize. "Separatists," Jamie whispered to himself, remembering Lyra's warning. "Correct," Delilah confirmed in his ear. "They appear to be members of the Kravtai faction, Herzari traditionalists who oppose diplomatic relations with other species." One of the separatists fired a weapon that sent Vactor staggering backward, a burn mark appearing on his armor. The other 2 defenders were already showing signs of injury, but continued fighting with grim determination. "Where's Lyra?" Jamie asked, scanning the chaotic scene. "Where's Commander Vi?" "Unknown," Delilah replied. "But security scans indicate fighting in the adjacent conference room as well." As if in confirmation, a thunderous crash sounded from behind the conference room doors. Jamie edged along the wall, trying to remain unseen while working his way closer to those doors. The bond fluff on his shoulder had turned a deep, pulsing red, clearly reflecting either Jamie's fear or sensing the danger around them. He had almost reached the conference room when the doors burst open. A separatist soldier flew through the opening as if thrown, crashing into the opposite wall with bone-crushing force. Through the doorway, Jamie caught glimpses of furious combat, and at the center of it all, Lyra Vi moved with lethal grace, facing what appeared to be the separatist leader. Even from this distance, Jamie could see that Lyra was injured. A deep gash ran across her forehead, and she favored her left side as she fought. The separatist leader, a massive Herzari with scarred blue skin, pressed his advantage, wielding a crackling energy blade that hummed with deadly purpose. "You dishonor our people, Varshilin," the leader snarled in the Herzari language, which Jamie's translator earpiece rendered into English. "Consorting with weak aliens, engaging in their pathetic diplomatic games. The true dishonor is attacking without warning, Dravkor," Lyra responded, her voice cold with controlled fury. "The humans have shown courage and honor worthy of respect." "So the rumors are true," Dravkor laughed cruelly. "The great commander, Vi, has been corrupted by these soft creatures. Perhaps this human has weakened more than your resolve." With a roar of rage, Lyra launched herself at the separatist leader, but her injuries slowed her just enough for him to sidestep her attack. As she stumbled past, off balance, Dravkor raised his weapon for what would surely be a killing blow. Jamie didn't think. He acted. "Hey, ugly," he shouted, stepping into the doorway. "Is this really how the mighty Herzari fight? Attacking injured opponents? Not very honorable, is it?" Dravkor froze, his weapon still raised, and turned to stare at Jamie with open contempt. "The human pet speaks," he sneered. "Do you think you understand honor, weakling?" "I understand that a true warrior would face an equal opponent," Jamie replied, his heart pounding so hard he was surprised that Herzari couldn't hear it. "Or are you afraid Commander Vi would defeat you in a fair fight?" It was a calculated insult, drawing on everything Jamie had learned about Herzari culture. For a warrior like Dravkor, being called a coward was an unbearable slight. As Jamie had hoped, Dravkor's attention fully shifted from Lyra to him. What he hadn't anticipated was how quickly the Separatist would move. Before Jamie could react, Dravkor had crossed the room and seized him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one powerful hand. "You dare question my honor?" Dravkor growled, his face inches from Jamie's. "I will crush your fragile bones and present your skull to Lyra Vi as a reminder of her folly." Jamie struggled for breath, clawing ineffectually at the Herzari's grip. Through darkening vision, he saw the bond fluff leave his shoulder, zipping erratically around Dravkor's head in what seemed like a futile attempt to distract the warrior. Then, behind Dravkor, Jamie glimpsed movement. Lyra, rising to her feet, her amber eyes blazing with fury. She moved silently, retrieving her weapon from where it had fallen. "Luckily," Jamie rasped, struggling to get the words out through his constricted airway, "I'm not the one you need to worry about." Confusion flickered across Dravkor's face, followed by the dawning realization of his tactical error. He began to turn, but it was too late. Lyra's weapon connected with his back with a crackling discharge of energy that sent him convulsing to the floor, his grip on Jamie releasing instantly. Jamie collapsed, gasping for air. Lyra stood over the fallen Separatist, her weapon trained on him with unwavering precision. "You are defeated, Dravkor," she stated coldly. "Surrender now, and you may yet salvage some fragment of honor." Wheezing on the floor, Dravkor glared up at her with hatred. "Kill me then, Varshilin. I will not surrender to one who has forgotten what it means to be Herzari." "You are wrong," Lyra replied, her voice steady despite her injuries. "I have not forgotten, but perhaps I have learned that there is more to being Herzari than blind adherence to tradition." She glanced briefly at Jamie. Sometimes strength can be found in unexpected places. Before Dravkor could respond, the conference room doors slid open again, and Captain Martinez entered, flanked by security officers and several uninjured Herzari warriors, including Vactor. "Commander Vi," Martinez said tersely, "we've secured the ship. The remaining attackers have been captured or repelled." "Excellent," Lyra acknowledged, turning the subdued Dravkor over to Vactor and the security team. Only when the Separatist leader had been removed did she finally allow her rigid posture to soften slightly, revealing the extent of her injuries. "You need medical attention," Jamie said, his own voice still rough from Dravkor's grip. "As do you," Lyra replied, her amber eyes regarding him with an unreadable expression. "That was either extremely brave or extremely foolish, Jamie Trenner." "I think we both know which one it was," Jamie replied with a weak smile. "Perhaps both," Lyra said, and to the surprise of everyone present, she extended her hand to help Jamie to his feet, a gesture of equality that caused Vactor's eyes to widen and Captain Martinez to raise an eyebrow. As Jamie accepted her help, the bond fluff returned to hover between them, its color shifting to a deep, steady purple once more. The aftermath of the Separatist attack created a diplomatic crisis that consumed the next several days. The Dauntless remained on high alert while repairs were conducted, and both human and Herzari officials engaged in lengthy communications with their respective governments. The formal negotiations were temporarily suspended while security protocols were reassessed. Jamie, after a brief stay in the medical bay for treatment of his bruised throat, found himself unexpectedly elevated in status. Word of his actions during the attack had spread quickly through both delegations, and he now received respectful nod from Herzari warriors who had previously ignored his existence. Even Ambassador Chun had begrudgingly acknowledged that Jamie's unorthodox relationship with Commander Vi might have helped prevent a worse diplomatic incident. For 3 days, however, Jamie didn't see Lyra at all. She was reportedly occupied with security debriefings and communications with Herzari High Command regarding the captured separatists. The Bond fluff remained with Jamie, its colors shifting between calm blues and occasionally flashing to purple, particularly when he thought about Lyra. "You miss her," Delilah observed on the evening of the third day, as Jamie sat in his quarters staring at reports he was supposed to be reviewing. "That's ridiculous," Jamie replied automatically. "I barely know her." "The Bond fluff suggests otherwise," Delilah noted. The small creature had indeed just flashed to bright purple again. According to Dr. Frost's research, that particular color indicates emotional resonance between bonded individuals. Jamie sighed, setting aside his datapad. "Even if that's true, which I'm not admitting, it doesn't matter. She's a high-ranking commander of an alien warrior race. I'm a junior diplomat who accidentally started this whole mess. Once the current crisis settles down, everything will go back to normal." "Define normal," Delilah challenged. "Because based on my observations, your interactions with Commander Vi, however they began, have evolved into something of genuine significance to both of you." Before Jamie could formulate a response, his door chime sounded. He frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone at this hour. "Enter," he called, standing up. The door slid open to reveal Lyra Vi. She was dressed not in her usual armor, but in what appeared to be more formal attire. Deep purple fabric with silver embroidery that complemented her violet skin. The wound on her forehead had healed to a faint line, barely visible. "Commander," Jamie said, momentarily stunned. "I wasn't expecting you." "Clearly," Lyra replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. "May I enter?" "Of course." Jamie gestured her in, suddenly acutely aware of his own rumpled appearance and the disorganized state of his quarters. The Bond fluff immediately flew to hover near Lyra, pulsing with bright purple light. Lyra watched the creature with a thoughtful expression. "I see it as fully bonded with you. Is that what the purple means?" Jamie asked. "Delilah was just telling me something about emotional resonance." "Your AI is correct," Lyra confirmed. "But it is unusual for a Bond fluff to display such colors between individuals of different species. It suggests, compatibility that defies conventional understanding." An awkward silence fell between them. Jamie searched for something appropriate to say. "How are the negotiations going?" he finally asked. "I've been somewhat out of the loop." "They will resume tomorrow," Lyra said. "But that is not why I am here." She seemed uncharacteristically hesitant, almost uncertain. "The attack by the Separatists has forced both our peoples to accelerate certain aspects of our diplomatic relationship. There is now pressure to establish more formal ties between humans and Herzari." "I've heard rumors," Jamie admitted. "Some kind of treaty or alliance?" "Yes," Lyra confirmed. "And the High Command has suggested that our situation could serve as a symbolic foundation for this new relationship." Jamie sat down slowly, processing her words. "They want to use us as some kind of political symbol? Turn our misunderstanding into official policy?" "In essence, yes." Lyra remained standing, her posture rigid. "They propose that we complete the Jurek rituals formally, as representatives of our respective peoples. So they're basically ordering you to continue this courtship with me?" Jamie asked incredulously. "Because it's politically convenient? They cannot order me in matters of Jurek," Lyra said firmly. "Such a bond must be entered willingly or not at all. That is why I am here, Jamie Trenner. Not as Commander Vi, but as Lyra." She finally sat down across from him, her amber eyes holding his gaze steadily. "The beginning of our connection was accidental, but what has grown between us since then is not. At least, not for me." Jamie felt his heart rate accelerate. "Not for me either," he admitted quietly. "Then we face a choice," Lyra continued. "We can allow our connection to be shaped by political necessities, becoming what our leaders wish us to be. Or we can define it ourselves, on our own terms, regardless of its diplomatic utility." "And what do you want?" Jamie asked, hardly believing he was having this conversation. Lyra's expression softened slightly. I've spent my life in service to my people, following the path of duty and honor. I have never considered what I might want separate from those obligations." She paused, seeming to search for words. "But I find myself reluctant to reduce what has developed between us to a mere political arrangement." The Bonfluff, still hovering nearby, pulsed with an intensity that cast purple light across both their faces. On impulse, Jamie reached across the small space between them and took Lyra's hand. Her skin was warmer than a human's, with a subtle texture that reminded him of fine suede. "Then let's not," he said simply. "Whatever this is between us, this bizarre, unexpected thing, let's figure out ourselves. Not as representatives of our species, but just as us." A deep crimson flush spread across Lyra's cheeks, but this time she didn't look away or try to hide it. Instead, her fingers closed around Jamie's, her strength carefully restrained. "The Herzari have a concept," she said softly, "called Varkresht, the path that reveals itself only as you walk it. I believe this may be such a path for both of us." "I like that idea," Jamie replied with a smile, "especially the part about walking it together." The Bonfluff's purple glow intensified, bathing the room in its light. The next morning, Jamie and Lyra entered the grand hall together, causing a ripple of murmurs from both human and Herzari delegations. They had spent hours talking the night before, sharing stories of their respective worlds and experiences, finding unexpected common ground despite their obvious differences. They had reached no definitive conclusions about their relationship, but had agreed on one important thing. They would face whatever came next as allies, if not yet something more defined. Ambassador Chen intercepted them before they could reach the main diplomatic table. "Trenner," he hissed, "what do you think you're doing? We were supposed to coordinate our approach before the session." "Apologies, Ambassador," Jamie replied calmly. "Commander Vi and I were discussing some cultural matters that seemed relevant to today's negotiations." Chen's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "And these cultural matters required a private discussion without official oversight. Some matters are best discussed directly between the individuals concerned," Lyra interjected smoothly. "Is that not the essence of diplomacy, Ambassador?" Before Chun could respond, the doors at the far end of the hall opened to admit a new figure, a Herzari even more imposing than Lyra, with deep indigo skin and elaborate armor that marked him as someone of extremely high rank. "High Commander Savek," Lyra murmured to Jamie, leader of the Herzari fleet and representative of the High Council. His presence was unexpected. The hall fell silent as Savek strode to the center of the room. He surveyed the assembled delegates with an expression of stern evaluation before his gaze settled on Lyra and Jamie. "Commander Vi," he announced, his voice resonating through the hall. "The High Council has received your report regarding the separatist attack and the actions taken by both Herzari and human forces to repel it. We are satisfied with the outcome." Lyra inclined her head in acknowledgement, but remained silent. "We are also aware," Savek continued, "of the unusual situation that has developed between you and this human." His gaze shifted to Jamie, who fought the urge to step backward. "Junior Envoy Trenner, I believe?" "Yes, High Commander," Jamie confirmed, trying to match Lyra's composed demeanor. "The Council has deliberated on this matter," Savek announced, addressing the entire hall now. "In light of recent events, and considering the strategic importance of human-Herzari relations, we have decided to formally recognize the Jurek between Commander Vi and Envoy Trenner as a symbol of the new alliance between our peoples." Murmurs erupted throughout the hall. Jamie felt a moment of panic. This was exactly what they had wanted to avoid, their personal connection being co-opted for political purposes. "With respect, High Commander," Lyra said, stepping forward, "the Jarek is a sacred tradition that cannot be dictated by political necessity. It must arise from genuine mutual recognition and respect between the individuals involved." Savek's expression remained impassive. "Are you claiming that your connection with this human lacks such qualities, Commander?" "No," Lyra replied firmly. "I am stating that the nature and progress of our Jurek should be determined by us alone, not by the Council's diplomatic agenda." A tense silence fell over the hall. Jamie could sense the political weight of the moment. Lyra was directly challenging her superior's authority, a dangerous move in Herzari culture. To everyone's surprise, including apparently Lyra's, Savek's stern expression gave way to what might have been a smile. "Precisely the response I expected from you, Varshilin," he said, using her formal title with what sounded like approval. "The Council does not wish to dictate the terms of your Jurek. We merely acknowledge its existence and its potential significance for our peoples." He turned to address the assembled delegations. "The attack by the Separatists has demonstrated that we face common enemies who would seek to prevent cooperation between humans and Herzari. It has also shown that together, we are stronger than apart. The bond that has begun to form between Commander Vi and Envoy Trenner, however unexpected its origin, serves as living proof of this potential." Jamie felt Lyra relax slightly beside him. Savek had managed to frame their situation in a way that served the political needs of the Alliance without directly commandeering their personal connection. "The formal treaty negotiations will proceed as planned," Savek continued. "But they will do so with the understanding that meaningful alliances are built not just on strategic interests, but on genuine recognition of worth between different peoples." He turned back to Lyra and Jamie. "Your Jarek will proceed according to tradition, at its own pace and in its own way. The Council asks only that you remember it represents something larger than yourselves, even as it remains uniquely yours." With that somewhat cryptic statement, Savek stepped back, signaling the formal negotiations could begin. As the delegates moved to their assigned positions, Jamie leaned closer to Lyra. "Did we just get official blessing to figure this out on our own? Or did we get drafted as the mascots for human-Herzari relations?" he whispered. "Both, I believe," Lyra replied, the faintest hint of amusement in her voice. "The High Commander is known for his ability to solve multiple problems with a single solution." "Clever," Jamie admitted. "So what now?" "Now," Lyra said, "we continue as we have begun, one step at a time along our Varkresh." After a brief hesitation, she added, "Though perhaps with fewer near-death experiences, if possible." Jamie couldn't help but laugh, drawing curious glances from nearby delegates. "I'd like that. The fewer near-death experiences part, I mean." The Bonfluff, which had been contentedly perched on Jamie's shoulder throughout the exchange, pulsed with a new color, a warm, golden glow that neither of them had seen before. "That's new," Jamie observed. "Yes," Lyra agreed, her expression softening as she looked at the small creature. "In our tradition, that particular shade represents hope." In the weeks that followed, the formal treaty negotiations proceeded with surprising smoothness. The Separatist attack had actually served to strengthen the resolve of both sides to form a lasting alliance, and the presence of Savek lent additional weight to the proceedings. Meanwhile, Jamie and Lyra continued their own unique form of cultural exchange. The traditional challenges of Jurek were adapted to accommodate their different backgrounds and capabilities. Rather than tests of combat prowess, they engaged in exchanges of knowledge, shared experiences from their respective worlds, and gradually built a deeper understanding of each other. Jamie introduced Lyra to Earth cuisine, or at least the ship's approximations of it, human music, and the concept of recreational activities that didn't involve training for battle. Lyra, in turn, taught Jamie about Herzari history, their complex honor codes, and even some basic self-defense techniques that left him sore but oddly satisfied. The Bonfluff, which Jamie had named Flicker despite Lyra's insistence that Bonfluffs weren't typically given names, became a constant companion to both of them, its colors shifting to reflect their growing connection. The crew of the Dauntless gradually became accustomed to the sight of the imposing Herzari commander and the unassuming human diplomat walking together through the ship's corridors, deep in conversation with the luminescent creature floating between them. Ambassador Chun, after initial resistance, had come to see the diplomatic advantages of the situation and now regularly consulted Jamie on matters related to Herzari culture. Vactor, too, had shifted from suspicious tolerance to something approaching respect, particularly after Jamie had made a concerted effort to learn proper Herzari formal greetings in their native language. 5 weeks after the separatist attack, as the treaty negotiations were nearing completion, Jamie and Lyra found themselves once again in the ship's arboretum, the site of their first real conversation. The space had been modified since then, with the addition of some Herzari plant species alongside the Earth specimens, creating a literal hybrid garden that seemed an appropriate metaphor for their relationship. The final treaty signing is tomorrow, Jamie noted, watching as Flicker danced among the luminescent flowers of a Herzari night bloom. After that, I suppose everyone goes their separate ways. Yes, Lyra agreed, her tone thoughtful. The Dauntless will return to Earth, and our fleet will continue its patrol of the outer systems. Neither of them stated the obvious implication that their time together was coming to an end, at least in its current form. We never did complete all 7 challenges of the traditional Jarek, Jamie said, trying to keep his tone light despite the heaviness in his chest. No, Lyra acknowledged, though I believe we have honored its spirit, if not its exact form. So what does that mean? Jamie asked, finally voicing the question that had hovered between them for weeks. For us, I mean, when all the diplomats and officials go home, what happens to this? He gestured between them. Lyra was silent for a long moment, her amber eyes reflecting the soft glow of the Arboretum's evening lighting. When she finally spoke, her voice held a vulnerability that still surprised Jamie whenever he heard it. In Herzari tradition, the completion of Jarek leads to Krevenar, the formal joining of lives. But we're not bound by tradition alone, Jamie Trenner. We have created our own path. And where does that path lead? Jamie pressed gently. Instead of answering directly, Lyra reached out and took his hand, a gesture that had become more natural between them over the weeks, but still sent a warm current through Jamie's body. I have been offered a new position, she said, as the Herzari military attaché to Earth. It would involve extended residence on your planet, serving as a liaison between our forces. Jamie's heart leapt. You're coming to Earth? If I accept the position, Lyra clarified, it would be a significant change from command of a battle fleet. Some might view it as a step down in status. But, Jamie prompted, sensing there was more. But, Lyra continued, a hint of that now familiar crimson appearing on her cheeks. It would allow us to continue exploring this path we have begun. Together. Jamie couldn't contain his smile. I think that sounds like an excellent idea. Though I should warn you, Earth might be more overwhelming than a battle fleet. Our cuisine alone could be considered a form of warfare. That drew a genuine laugh from Lyra, a sound that had become less rare, but no less precious to Jamie's ears. I am prepared to face such challenges, she assured him, her eyes bright with amusement. After all, I have survived being called cute by a human diplomat. Earth's cuisine can hardly be more dangerous than that. You know, Jamie said thoughtfully, I never did ask what exactly made you blush when I said that. I mean, I know what the word means in your culture now, but your reaction seemed personal. Lyra's expression grew more serious, though the crimson on her cheeks deepened slightly. No one had ever seen me that way before, she admitted, as someone who could be desired, rather than merely respected or feared. It was unexpected. And now? Jamie asked softly. Now, Lyra said, her voice equally soft. I find I have grown accustomed to being seen by you, Jamie Trenner, not just as Commander Vi or as a Herzari, but as myself. Flicker drifted back to hover between them, its light shifting to that deep, vibrant purple that had become familiar, then brightening to the golden hue of hope. You know, Jamie said, drawing slightly closer to her, on Earth, there's a tradition when 2 people decide to continue their path together. Oh, Lyra inquired, her head tilting in that way that Jamie had come to find endearing. What tradition is that? It's a bit like this, Jamie said, and with more courage than he needed to face down Dravkor, he leaned forward and gently pressed his lips to hers. For a moment, Lyra went completely still, clearly surprised by the unfamiliar gesture. Then, slowly, she responded, her hand tightening around his. When they finally drew apart, her entire face had flushed that beautiful crimson, but her amber eyes were shining. An interesting tradition, she commented, her voice slightly unsteady. "We may need to practice it further to ensure I fully understand its cultural significance." Jamie laughed, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. "I'd be happy to provide as many demonstrations as necessary. For diplomatic purposes, of course." "Of course," Lyra agreed solemnly, though her eyes betrayed her amusement. "The success of human-Rosari relations may depend on it." Flickers swirled around them both, trailing golden light in intricate patterns. Beyond the Arboretum's transparent ceiling, stars gleamed against the velvet backdrop of space. The same stars that would shine over both their worlds, now bound together by treaties, alliances, and the unexpected connection between a junior human diplomat and a Herzari commander. "You're really cute when you blush, you know," Jamie said softly, deliberately using the word that had started everything. "So I've been told," Lyra replied, no longer fighting the crimson that spread across her cheeks. "By someone who sees more clearly than most." And as they stood together beneath the stars, their path forward still uncertain, but undeniably shared, Jamie reflected that sometimes the greatest diplomatic breakthroughs came not from careful planning or strategic calculation, but from the simple, unexpected moments of genuine connection, even ones that began with a linguistic mistake and an alien warrior turning bright red.